Hey everyone, and welcome to the new episode of Full Funnel Live. Good morning to our North American audience. We're again broadcasting from sunny and hot Spain. And as promised, today we are going to dive deeper into buyer enablement. Last week we were chatting with Vlad that this is actually the topic that we have never covered in depth on our podcast, and we repeatedly receive questions about how the buyer enablement program looks like, what are kind of the key pillars of the buyer enablement, and obviously we also love to ruin the most common fallacies about buyer enablement. It's not just the big marketing deck that you send to your prospects, to accounts that you are currently engaging with, and a bunch of different case studies, right? That's not the key. So we're going to talk about the buyer enablement preparation, how to align it with the buying process, not the sales process. We'll also explain the difference between the buying process and the sales process. And at the end, we'll share with you a couple of our own examples. So stay tuned and let us know, meanwhile, where you guys all join from. We see Peyton from Portland. Good to see you. Let us know in the chat where you all join us from. And meanwhile, just to share with you why we decided to talk about this topic. Actually, we were running the analysis of our deals. It was Q1 this year. We were running the deal analysis of the previous quarter, Q4 of 2024. And we actually realized, we didn't pay that much attention, but we realized that we increased our win rate to almost 50% from all qualified opportunities. Obviously, I'm referring to the qualified opportunities. And we did a couple of tweaks, right? That's actually our buyers, they confirmed that these tweaks helped us to accelerate the deal and close the deal successfully. And we can look at this process from both marketing and sales perspective, right? Because at the same, in our company with Vladimir, we both are sales and marketers. So this is what we would love to share with you. But first, maybe Vlad, let me bring you to the stage, and let's kick it off with explaining the difference between buying process and sales process, how we traditionally think about it as B2B companies. And so then we can proceed and talk about the buyer enablement program development.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Eren, for offering assistance for my upcoming trip. Really appreciate it. So I think you have probably heard of the term sales enablement. We are talking about buyer enablement. That should already give you a hint as to the difference between the two programs. Has to do indeed with the difference between the buyer and the sales process, right? When you look at the sales process, marketing and sales process, we usually define neat stages where the prospect becomes aware, they might become an MQL, which is then nurtured into an SQL, then they become an SQO, and then they go through different sales pipeline stages until they become a deal. And the reason we do, there are many different reasons why we do that. It makes things more measurable. We can focus on improving these conversion steps from one step to another. But of course, what we know is that the reality of the buying process, especially these last 2 years, a lot of changes have happened. Initially, first during COVID, a lot of the steps went online, more people got involved, but then especially during the last 2 years, this has even more drastically changed. We are hearing a lot about this. So what is the difference between the buying process and the sales process? We have these neat stages that we try to make measurable. We use it also for the forecast, et cetera, but they don't really match the stages that the buyers go through. What the buyers usually go through, first, a very long non-buying process where they are really only interested in educating themselves, consuming the content, knowing what's happening in the industry, where actually it is the status quo, right? And that status quo, this is the longest part of the process. And the reason why I'm even talking about it, a lot of companies might not even focus on that part, is because this is actually where you will generate a lot of that you can generate a lot of awareness and increase the chance of getting into the consideration set. Because this is the first insight. The first insight about the buying process is that a lot of buyers, especially enterprise buyers, according to a recent study, 86% of them actually will shortlist and maybe even select a solution they discovered before they started the buying process. So how can marketing help sales? Can help tremendously by helping generate that awareness. That is the first part. But let's talk about today's session is more focused on what happens after the buying process actually starts. Maybe they were in contact already with your sales team, right? A lot of things happen. They will first initially have a lot of internal discussions to understand and define the problem, because a lot of times there are, well, not a lot of times, there are always competing priorities within the organization. So your champion or the person who is trying to maybe implement a new solution, a solution like yours, or trying to solve a specific problem, will have to compete, not necessarily, to get the budget, but also the budget itself, with other priorities. The organization will always have other priorities. So initially, even just deciding, is this something that is priority that we should be looking at versus other priorities? Is this something that, yes, it's a priority, but is this something that we can solve ourselves? Is this something that we can solve using our own solutions that we already have in-house? Is this something that maybe we can use an existing solution that has been already approved by the procurement department? These are all the steps that the buyers will go through in the buying process. So the question becomes then, okay, so how can you then influence that from the marketing and sales perspective? Is you will need also to address the priority, show them the cost of doing nothing, et cetera, which we will dive into a bit later. The most important point that I wanted to make about the differences between the sales and the buying process is that a lot of these things that need to happen are not even modeled in the sales process. Like I said, this whole long part of status quo, then discussing whether that's even a priority, whether that's something that we can solve ourselves or not, is usually we all assume that no, they're looking for a solution, they're evaluating our solution, and that's where our process starts. So I think this is the first most important thing to take away. The second one is that the process is not linear, that there are a lot of people that are involved, and that a lot of the steps in that process happen behind closed doors, or they happen at least behind the view of our analytics, attribution software, etc. So there are a lot of internal discussions, back and forth messages, meetings. There are many things that can happen that influence your deal that you're not aware of. Maybe your champion, the person who is presenting a solution to their colleagues or their supervisors, gets a critical question they don't know how to answer. Like, this is a very important part of the sales process, very important for you. And the point is, they will try to get that answer themselves. They will try to, go on your website, read the information, get that answer. We don't always make this easy. That's another story. But the point here is that there are a lot of these steps that are very important, that impact your deal, that happen, and you're not even aware of them. There are a lot of questions that their colleagues might have. There's a lot of back and forth. They may even at the end come to a conclusion that they want that solution, almost come all the way to the end, and then the priorities may shift again. So all of these things are happening behind the closed doors that we might not be aware of.
And I think what is really important is also to think about your own buying experience, right? It's if we'll try to summarize everything what Vlad have said, what will make sense for you as the first step. Remember, the last time you onboarded a new vendor, could be whatever software development company, marketing agency, consulting company, right? Or when was the last time when you have purchased an expensive software, right? You can, if you'll think holistically about your buying process, there were a lot of discussions where the vendor wasn't involved, right? There were a lot of critical questions. And obviously, there were a lot of factors that influenced your decision. We spoke that there are factors that influence how you select the vendors, right? But that happens before the sales or the buying process starts, right? And we covered this during the previous episodes about awareness and demand generation creation, right? Then the actual conversation happens with the different vendors, right? And even if you had a prioritized vendor, but that vendor can't provide you clear information, can't give you good arguments that you can present to the decision makers at your company, right? Or if you are a decision maker, but you look at these, let's say, arguments and they are not credible for you, they don't influence, or let's say they leave you doubting the investment, right? You don't have kind of clear idea that this would be a high ROI investment, then the deal is likely to get stalled. This is what we often hear from whenever we're discussing with sales teams. They are saying, hey, my deals stall, for example, how can I reactivate stolen pipeline, right? And when we start asking the question, how can we reactivate stolen pipeline, it means that we are too late to the process, right? Because there are challenges already happening, and somehow we caused these challenges. Obviously not all of them, right? But somehow. So, and that could mean, for example, there are all with Vlad, once we kind of mapped out the 4 critical areas that, or 4 critical pillars that influence that deal stagnation, right? One of them is when you put in front of your target accounts sales reps without domain knowledge, or you put them into unnecessary qualification process before they actually have time to talk to subject matter experts at your company. This becomes even more complicated if you are selling to IT audiences, healthcare, cybersecurity, etc., right? Where these people love to talk to solution architects, to their peers, basically, right? And not to sales reps without any domain knowledge that don't understand jobs to be done. This is one of the things. The second one is usually lack of clear information, right? And this is basically the marketing part. Unclear, vague messaging, which means that they are going to your website, they are going through some critical pages, and they can't understand anything, right? There is tons of fluffy information, and you have still, you doubt what this product does. And actually, even if you'll get it, right, you still don't understand it. Kind of, does this product functions as needed? Can it help you with your jobs to be done, right? So unclear messaging. Next, not providing the critical information. For example, if critical information is about integrations or data security or migration or whatever, and you don't have this information, that's another reason, right? Because quite often, if we speak especially about mid-market or enterprise deals, there would be several departments involved, right? So they would anyhow present this, let's say, your product to these departments, and they will hear these critical questions, which means that they would need to come back to you, right, and ask these critical questions. Next, for example, there is, we have seen this a couple of times actually in ABM space. There were lots of ABM vendors. Some of them, I believe, probably don't exist, or at least I don't hear about them. But a few years ago, when ABM started to kind of become popular marketing topic, these companies, they invested a lot into hype. But then when you go to their website, you have no idea what's like all this marketing slang means. And there is no product overview. And there is no way to test the product. So the only way is booking a demo and then obviously praying when they will actually show you how that product works, which is a huge waste of time, right, for everybody. So, and obviously not providing enough qualification information. Often this is the pricing, and in enterprise we often hear that it's not possible to provide pricing because of complications, which is fair enough, but at least you can give estimates, right? What is the estimated project pricing calculators? If that's not the case, because sometimes that could be also not the case, fair enough, then you can provide enough information about your ideal account and basically your ideal customer profile and ideal buyer personas for whom this product is or service and for whom it's not, given clear qualification and disqualification criteria, so people could just disqualify themselves if they feel that they are not the right fit. And you save time also for your sales team, right? And you avoid all unnecessary conversations about low quality marketing pipeline. So these are the keys that kind of influence that deal stolen, right? And obviously, like, let's say maybe you don't have half of them, but then you have the first conversation, your prospects they start asking these questions and you don't have this information. So what is the best case scenario? The best case scenario in this case is that you have a knowledgeable sales rep who could reply these questions, right? Because that person has tons of domain knowledge. The second scenario, the sales rep would say, hey, let's book another call with whoever from my team who might be able to help with this, right? But actually, quite often we're not hearing these questions, right? So for example, they might end up the call, everything sounds good, they come to whatever, to IT department or to CFO, to somebody else, and they start getting new questions, right? And if they don't have new replies, and like Vlad said, they have tons of other priorities, the deal priority immediately goes down, right? Okay, so we don't have enough information, but I need, for example, to prepare for the event or for the kickoff call or whatever, right? So there could be multiple things. So your deal priority is going down, right? Now, what's interesting? We just discussed the complexities of the buying process. And again, I highly recommend to think about your experience as a buyer, right? Because I believe all of us were and are buyers at some stages, right? At some times. And then think about your sales process. Just look at your CRM, how your CRM is orchestrated, right? Quite often it's very simple. It's just, okay, the discovery call, right? Then or demo call, then proof of concept, and then let's say proposal, and then closed won, closed lost, right? And when sales have the discussions about the pipeline, they say, yeah, that still sits on the proof of concept or whatever, procurement, legal, or proposal sent, right? The problem is that nobody has an idea of what's happening internally and at what actual buying stage your deal currently is, right? That's the key. So these are the missing points. And when Vlad mentioned the complexity of that buying process, the first step actually holistically think about it. And if you don't have enough insights, start talking to your customers, right? At least pick up the recent closed won deals, the new customers, and interview them about all the touch points. Combine it with the sales insights about the questions that these people ask, right? What are the most common questions? And this would be your basic outline, right? The first step is understanding how historically that works, because the good buyer enablement basically facilitates the buying process, right? These buyers, they get answers before the questions occur in the pop-up, right? That's the key. So the second one is looking at all the friction points that you have in the process and think about, is there anything else that I could remove, right? Or I can make it aligned with the buyer needs, right? Am I providing all the necessary information? Am I not hiding the critical information? Is my message up to date? Is it clear enough? Do I give at least a good product? In some, and there are multiple ways, right, how you can present your product, right? So interactive demos, product videos, whatever, use cases, there could be plenty of things. So this would be the critical steps. When you outline this, the next step is just think about what would be how the good buyer enablement program will look like. Again, traditionally, companies think about that buyer enablement is just collection of different case studies and a big marketing deck where we explain why our product is the best in the category, all the potential features, etc., 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 right? Which in reality, not the most important information for your buyers. So I think, Vlad, I would love to bring you back and just ask you to share your experience on developing this buyer enablement program. So what are the key pillars and what are the key documents that you need to have?
Okay, thank you. I think that again, the first step is, like you just mentioned, is understanding, running that analysis, understanding the process that your customers go through, and understanding the questions that they have as they go through that process, the most critical questions that they have, the questions that they get from their colleagues, because they will give, you need to be answering those questions. You need to be proactively working with those customers. I think another key important piece of, another key element here is that to understand is that you are not really selling your deal, your product. It's actually the champion. So somebody internally who is selling to their colleagues, selling to the quote unquote buying center of the buying committee. And that you are helping that person build the necessary business case internally to show why solving this problem is a priority right now, how your solution, why your solution is actually going to be the best fit solution for their specific situation that they're in, how quickly they will have return of that. Well, first of all, how quickly will they be able to implement that? Who needs to be involved in the implementation? Like, a lot of companies are very much focused on the product itself, but the users or the customers, the future users and the customers also want to know, okay, but what will I need to be able to actually implement it? How long will it take? Who do you need from my people internally? Do we have the capacity to do that and the knowledge? Will there be some migration that will need to happen? And if yes, is this something that you will help with, or this is something that we have to do? And then how soon will all of that be implemented so that I can see and hopefully start getting the value out of your product? Or will I also have to onboard and train people? How will this impact my internal processes? Will I have to run change management? I think like change management is another thing that is very much underestimated. You will need to change the status quo, but you might also need to change or impact some processes, which is very difficult. If the team there has just gone through a big change management, big implementation, they might just not have the capacity or the willingness to go through another, let's say, change management. So you also have to show and let's say there is I don't know if there is equivalent in English, but there is a very nice saying in my native tongue, which is Serbian, the one who was bitten by a snake is also afraid of the lizards, right? So if you had the bad experience in the past where you had to go through this difficult, let's say, change management implementation process, you just had that bad experience, you're talking to a new vendor, you might assume that. So if I, as a vendor, don't reassure you and explain, hey, by the way, you know, we take care of everything. We take care of migration. This is what you need. This is exactly the steps that we will need to take. It takes this long. We will need these people. We'll take care of that, etc., etc. They might just assume that this is another snake or another difficult process that they need to go through. So as you can see, like I'm giving basically examples of the most frequent questions that your buyers might have, but you understanding the exact questions that they will have is really important, because this is going to drive your buyer enablement. So in our case, to give our example, a lot of times people will be thinking, do I have, because we are a consulting company, we are not an agency, we don't do it for you, we do it with your team. A lot of our customers will have, okay, what are the skills that, we'll have the question, what are the skills that I need to have internally to be able to implement ABM? What is the data that I need to have about my customers? What is the data that I need to have about my prospects and my customers to be able to run a successful ABM program, right? How soon can I see the results? Are you going to help me involve my sales, because I have tried in the past to involve my sales and that wasn't so successful? Is this something that you would also help me with? So I'm now kind of translating these generic questions that I just shared with you about implementation, etc., to our concrete example. And your job is to figure out very specific information that your customers are interested in. And then you need to proactively answer those questions. How do you answer those questions? It can be, depending on the question, it can be content. For example, let's say we're talking about a question about implementation. How long does it take? Who is involved, etc. This could be, let's say, kind of a process or a typical implementation plan, or a process map, or whatever format you do, which might be like a visual document that outlines the steps that you go through, the timeline, the people that need to involve at each step, what you help with, what they help with, and with those milestones also. For example, when we present milestones like that, we also share at each milestone what are the results or the outcomes that they can expect. Okay, so initially, we need to do some analysis, then we might need to, we will, let's say, define and start a pilot. After the first one, you can expect to have some engagement with your accounts. After the second one, you can start having some conversations, initial discovery calls, etc., etc. We are going to need a team of, we define exactly what team roles we want to have. You need to have one person from the ABM team, one person from the sales team. It's not a lot, it's this much of time, but they need to be dedicated to the process, right? This is going to be their role, so that our buyers can evaluate, okay, do I have people that have these skills? Oh, and by the way, these are the skills that we can help train, and this is what we would need, right? So again, proactively answering those with, for example, content. It doesn't have to be only content, let's say static documents that you might share with them. When it comes to, for example, creating a business case to help your champion defend this internally, usually the best form of content is actually a simple document that you will create together with your champion. So this is not going to be something that is generic, that you just share the same business case with every prospect. It's something that you will, based on the discovery that your sales has with your prospect, you will start understanding what their priorities are, what are the competing priorities, what is the problem. You will want to ask questions to help you understand what is the problem costing you today, and what happens if you don't solve that, so that you can show the so-called cost of doing nothing. And obviously at the kind of the flip side of that, the ROI that you can create for them by one, et cetera, et cetera. So this is another example where you will want to work together with your customer. You will also want to understand who else is involved in the sales process. So in our case, we might be speaking to the VP of marketing or the CMO or the head of, let's say, IBM and demand generation, but there will be other people who are involved. Maybe people from the content team, sales, people from sales, the VP of sales, or other types of buyers from the other roles in the buying committee structure. And they will have different questions. They will have different concerns. They will also have different goals. So the value of our product or our service in this case is going to be different for the head of marketing, is going to be different for the person who is working at sales. If we know that their sales team is struggling to get responses from their audience, from their buyers, because they lack awareness, well, we can show them that we, the ABM program that we can set up together can help increase awareness and help increase response rates and engage these high value target accounts as an example, right? So this is going to be very different than for the marketing team, where we can help show them how this program is going to help drive more marketing sourced revenue, how this is going to help them support their sales team, how is this going to help them move from, let's say, just engaged MQLs to actual pipeline, things that we know frequently our marketers, our marketing buyer has as a challenge. Obviously, you will want to also show relevant social proof as part of your buyer enablement. So ideally, you will show examples of similar customers, sharing the case studies. We like to always show two levels. We like to show real buyers. We always prefer to have a video interview, whether that's through our podcast. As you know, we frequently host our buyers on our podcast, and then we always extract a video that highlights kind of the problem, the solution, and the results there in the words of our buyer themselves. So it's not like self-serving, nicely copyrighted message, but an actual conversation where the buyer is sharing those things. But then we always link to the deeper case study, more detailed case study, where our prospect can really dive deeper and see all the different steps and the people who were involved and how it actually looked like, and find other answers to their questions, etc. Even if they don't always check and read all the details and go through all the videos, knowing that there is this information that is transparent, even just that is very much helping. Another thing that makes a big difference between just having a testimonial or a case study and having one that is going to have a big impact is openly sharing the contact information of those customers. So if you include like a case study, we will frequently also say, have an agreement already with that customer that they can serve, let's say, as a kind of a reference customer, that people can contact them. Again, not a lot of prospects do that, but knowing that makes a big difference. And sometimes they do. And sometimes, by the way, even if you don't proactively provide that information, they may actually go, not behind your back, because it's okay if they do that. And, oh, I might know this person. Let me reach out to them and ask them what their experience was with you. I mean, they will trust their peers much more than any marketing material that you may present to them. Other examples, I think there was a lot of talk these days on LinkedIn about self-serving comparison pages on website. When you show your product, you show the competitor product, and then you choose the exact rows in the table where you're comparing them. That makes you look the best, where you have checks on all the on your column where your product is, and all the X's on your your competitor's product. So that's obviously, again, buyers are very smart. They don't buy this kind of, so an honest breakdown of who we are not and who we are for, and having this kind of comparison where, for example, we can openly say that if you need, for example, in our case, a lot of prospects may compare us to an ABN agency, and that's a totally fair situation when the prospect doesn't have internal capacity. They're not necessarily interested in implementing ABM as part of their process, but they're interested in, let's say, agency services to help with an existing program or to run specific campaigns, etc. We are not a good fit for that. I mean, we are happily going to even refer our prospects to a competitor like that. We are for a specific type of client. So being open and transparent about it is also very helpful. Is there anything that of the types of documents or the types of buyer enablement, Andrei, that I maybe have forgotten to mention here, or?
No, I think you perfectly nailed it down. I would try to summarize everything that you have said. And meanwhile, guys, we tried to cover the questions that you have asked us before this podcast. There were questions about the different types of content that you can use. There was a question about why deals are stalled and is it happening on the contact level or on the opportunity level. So I feel that we have incorporated this. Now, if I will try to summarize everything, right? We spoke about the first preps, understanding that the buying process is different from the sales process, right? So hence you need to adapt to it, right? Obviously, we're not going to touch the sales part of this process, but let's say from the marketing perspective, for you, it's crucial to understand what is the information required from buyers at these different stages, right? That's the key. And then removing friction, improving your messaging, providing all necessary critical information, right? That's the key. So if I will summarize all of this, that means that buyer enablement exists on 3 levels. Level number 1, before the conversation starts, right? What Vlad have said already, that they might be visiting your website, they might be reading the use cases, case studies, integrations, whatever, right? Different pages on your website. So the key, the buyer enablement at this stage, right? Making sure that all the necessary information exists and this information is clear, right? No vague definitions, etc. Next, information, let's say the second level of buyer enablement, information before the discovery call. This is crucial. And this is where you do the first set of customization. And that customization happens either on use case level or vertical level, depending on whom you sell to, right? Depending on your ideal customer profile. What do I mean by this? That I mean that before your customers will have a call with sales rep, it's essential to pre-address some typical questions they might have, which gives sales more time to have more meaningful conversation and ask these critical questions that Vlad have mentioned already that will help to create this internal business case, understand better the requirements, understand better who is involved, understand better the competing priorities, etc., right? And not answering the typical questions. So from this perspective, if you know that this account belongs to, or this account has this specific use case or is coming from this vertical, you can immediately put the vertical or use case based information, case studies, again, maybe share at this stage before the call, because now you have official relationship, some information that you don't want to put on your website, right? That's critical. So the key is to pre-nurture this account and just focus on the value-added conversation. Or maybe in some rare cases, you disqualify them beforehand, so nobody is going to waste time, so they will see that, for example, they are not good fit. And from that perspective, you start working on the full customization. This is the third step of the buyer enablement, right? And unfortunately, there are no shortcuts or no templates, right? This is from this stage sales, they have the first conversation, And then you need to have this. Obviously, you don't need to do this for tier 3 accounts, right? We are referring to tier 1 to tier 2 accounts with the highest revenue potential. This is where you all sit together and start discussing. And obviously, if you have big teams, then you need to set up workflows for this. But let's say for the smaller teams, you can have a call. We always recommend to have weekly meetings where you discuss the deal status, the conversation that has happened, and the actual content that might help buyer to facilitate this deal internally, right? That would be the third level of buyer enablement. So sometimes it might be preparing some use cases for a specific buying committee member, sometimes helping with collecting some facts from the product marketing, etc. So it could be multiple things, right? And in a nutshell, this is how that looks like. From the sales perspective, then instead of your historical sales process, you need a traditional conventional sales process. You need to make the necessary adjustments to how your buyers buy, right? And understand the stages. And next step is thinking, how can you influence these steps, or how can you help, right? That means that if you know that historically you need to create business case because, let's say, imagine that in our case, let's pick up our case, that would be easier, right? These buyers would come and talk to VP of sales. This is inevitable, right? Hence, we need to have sales references, sales case studies, enough proof that the ABM impacts pipeline generation, etc., right? Something that they could easily use and present to their sales teams, right? And then when specific questions, for example, last time when we spoke, a couple of our new customers mentioned that sales wanted to see clear sales playbook. So with Vlad, we sat down and designed sales playbooks for these accounts, showing obviously simulative journeys, but explaining what would be the role of sales on practical examples, not just theoretical ones, right? But sharing with them practical examples so they could see how the activities might look like. So that's the key. And also we saw a couple of questions, so we're going to move to your questions right now. Before we'll move, I will very briefly show you also, I mentioned this kind of typical case, typical scenario for creating pre-call buyer enablement, right? So for us, we used Microsoft. I'm just using, obviously, I can't share the confidential information. So I just created a simulative Content Hub example, which we create for the buyers before the call, right? On our end, we try to keep it simple and practical on our website, so they have enough information about our services and how we can help, right? So I'm showing the level 2. Unfortunately, the level 3 won't be possible to show. So let's say the level 2, right? Microsoft books a call with us and they would love to talk to us. So in this case, we know, again, coming from the customer interviews, we nail down our process, how we work together, how we'll work with the team, and how our support looks like, how much help and they get, and what areas we'll be focusing on, what data we need to kick off, our and their responsibilities, pricing, involvement from the team, stack, case studies, right? So you can see the decks, for example, how and where should we start, the challenges we help, etc. We start with this ABM strategy sprint, how we'll work with your team, how our support looks like. So where we, again, and as you can see, we put some, this is a screenshot from the WhatsApp chat with our customers. So we try to put, because as Vlad said, they trust peers much more than, right, than the vendor collateral. So we try to make it practical and share these examples and show these things that we are going to work on together. Price and responsibilities, alternative formats, the team that they need to secure, right? And the responsibilities of the team and the time involvement, the technology stack, how we're going to measure the success of our program, the case studies and references and testimonials, right? The key point is, again, making sure that before they have call with us, they are nurtured on all of these things. They understand this, and then they can ask us practical questions, so we don't need to explain from scratch what Vlad said, that we are not agency in a sense that we don't do all the work instead of the client, right? But we do this work with them, explain the formats, explain the areas, explain the responsibilities. So again, this call where we can dive deeper into their needs, and they have an opportunity to ask some critical questions to clarify, right, if we are the right fit for them. So that's the key, and hope that helps. And we can move to Q&A block. Let's pick up.
I wanted to share this question because it's very much related to what you have just shared. So Lyndon asked, what does a full customization document look like? Have we got something to show us, not just for describing it? I think what Andres shared was not yet completely customized. That was customized to a prospect where we might not have enough information. There is an example that I can share with you. Let me just share this out here quickly. We have recently published this article. Maybe I also dropped a link about ABM content, and you will be able to find this example there, but let me navigate you to it. So where we share different types of content for different kinds of stages and levels of demand and different things. But here you can see an example of a fully customized document that we have created. Of course, it has been changed to anonymized and to protect our customers, our prospect in this case, but just wanted to show you how it might look like. In this case, we have spoken to, had the discovery call with the prospect. They mentioned that they have specific targets for the next year and that they have a gap. They don't know how to close that. They need to generate 60 million new pipeline with a new account-based marketing program. So that was kind of like what we learned during the program. So you can see that even the headline here, the title and the subhead here have been completely customized to the specific situation that this company is in. Remember what I said. I said we want to show the executives, the decision makers, the people who our champion is going to share our solution with, how our solution is going to help deal with a high business priority objective, right? Or a threat to a high problem that is a threat to a high priority business objective. This is exactly what this document does. We know that they have this specific revenue goal. They didn't meet the goal this year, and they're looking for solutions to that, right? So that's how we are positioning this. We are sharing the problems or the challenges that they shared with us. Okay, I didn't show here the whole complete document, but basically we share the solutions, we share the target outcomes, and start answering the questions, etc., etc. So this is an example. Hopefully that is what you meant, Lyndon, when you asked for an example of how a completely customized document might look like. It's actually the example that I shared was completely customized for our prospect based on these previous conversations.
Awesome. So a question from Peyton. What metrics should we track to measure the effectiveness of our buyer enablement efforts? I think there are only two, maybe three, but two critical metrics. So first of all is your win rate, and the second one is the sales cycle length, right? That's the key. Basically, if the win rate increases and the sales cycle decreases, then you are doing the good job, right? That's the key. Apparently, it also impacts the average contract value, but I would say this is more as a consequence, right? More as a lagging indicator, while sales cycle would be also the lagging indicator in this case. But anyhow, I would say that it would be the secondary metric, not the first one to judge, but sales cycle length and the win rates would be the key. And the next one, again, with you, so maybe let's share our thoughts, Vlad. We have invested heavily in creating customer champions, but struggle to leverage them effectively during competitive evaluations. How can we empower our champions to influence the buying committee more effectively without making them feel exploited or overused? Before you'll start replying, I would just drop 5 cents. Please give yourself and your team a favor and buy a book called Selling With by Nate Nasrallah. He was a speaker at our Full Funnel Summit last year. He is probably let's say we call him our go-to guy when it comes to buyer enablement, and maybe not the buyer enablement itself, but let's say building and selling with the champions. So if you want to help your sales team, that would be a go-to resource, and his LinkedIn content, the blog of his company Fluent would be the best resource. But given you, Vlad, Mike, to answer this question as well.
Yeah, I had a chat in the chat with Peyton about this question, because I think you can understand this question in 2 ways. You can understand this question as an internal champion of your deal, right? Which is what we spoke about, what you mentioned as well, and referred to Nate Nasrallah's book, Selling With. I dropped also the name of the author and the book in the comment. I think there is probably the best material you can get about it. And you can understand this question also as kind of your advocates. So maybe your existing customers, like our reference customers, customers that you had success with, who can also help you in a deal. Okay, so I will answer quickly both of these. So when it comes to your deal champions, so this is a prospect, you're trying to develop and win a deal with the target account, and you have somebody who is your main contact. Usually is the main contact and the person who is bringing you in and showing your solution and discussing internally. They should actually be quite motivated to help you out. In fact, you are helping them out, because if they're not motivated to implement a solution, and yours could be one of the solutions that they're implementing, they will, that's not necessarily a good sign. So I think, obviously, the way that you're interacting and then the conversations they're having, the kind of questions that you're sharing, whether you're doing this proactively, like Andrei shared from the very beginning, when you are actually, even before they appear on the call, you're already educating them and preparing materials so that they can review that before the call, offering them to ask any questions before the call. So being proactive about it, I think already is going to help them understand that you are somebody who wants to work with them to help them both understand your product, but also help them sell internally, right? So how you do that discovery process before discovery, during discovery, immediately after the discovery, is going to already put them in a different mindset. We also explicitly explain to them, like we will ask them during the discovery about their process, so who else is involved in that and what their questions are and what are the next steps, and who might be also internally have a different opinion about the problem, the priorities, and the solution, in order to again help uncover their pains as a champion, internal pains, and their jobs to be done, quote unquote, internally. They need to present the solution so that we can effectively arm them with the insight, knowledge, examples, tools, whatever they need to defend it. So very frequently, when you start behaving in that way, you will get more information, and then we will frequently also add specific insights based on these questions that we know they get from their colleagues. So I think this is kind of how you set yourself up for success, for a good collaboration with your champion, being collaborative, being proactive, asking the right question, providing the right material, and just helping them out. And then if you're talking about, let's say, your more reference customers, so existing customers, I mean, I just also want to say that in some cases, these customers actually might want to help you more than you think. I'm always humbled and surprised by how much satisfied customer is willing to help you out. We haven't rarely heard like when somebody's happy and then give us testimonial and appear they decide to appear on our podcast and to tell the story about their project. Usually they're also going to say that there's no problem, people can contact me if they want to learn more about you, they can contact me, I can share my contact information, they're happy to help. I've even experienced, not in our business, but one of my first clients, they were selling into manufacturing. I've even experienced like happy customers being willing to open their door and show around the implementation, spend 2 hours with the prospect, not only because of the relationship and wanting to help my client, but also because for them, it's also an opportunity to meet others from the industry. In some cases, it can be a big deal. So I just want to kind of like share these stories just to share with you that you shouldn't just assume that this is something that they have to, how do you say, get out of their way to help you, and that this is something that is not appropriate to ask, and it's not appropriate to have the conversation, that they're doing you a huge favor, and that they might not be willing to do that. I wouldn't assume that. I would assume that if you have a good relationship, that they're likely willing to help you and you can have an open conversation about it. I just wanted to say that. What's also helpful is, as I said, is, for example, we make sure we invite them on our podcast. We feature them. Of course, they're the champion of the story. It's not us who are the champion of that story, right? Who are the hero of the story, let's put it like that, right? It is always them. They actually did the most difficult work in making sure that, for example, in our case, this ABM implementation, whatever it was, worked out well. So we let them share their story. Obviously, also, it is, featuring that person. It can be very rewarding for that person themselves, help them kind of in their career as well, in a way, right? So I think like a lot of people might be willing to do that. But of course, in return, we get this unfiltered case study and testimonials. There's a big difference when you prepare a very nice self-serving case study document of 1 page where you say, this was a challenge, but by the way, these are all the results and all the features we have implemented with our customers, versus having just like a person come there live and just share their story, and you, without any editing, like just allowing your prospects to see that, and then even like letting them connect behind you, not knowing what they're going to talk about, is like a very different effect also, as much more valuable, right? But like also through that experience of being on your podcast or like running a webinar together with you and doing this case study, and you kind of like promoting them as a hero, they're more likely to also maybe later promote you or support you when you need support. I just wanted to drop this. I wasn't sure whether you were thinking about, let's say, more the advocates, as we might sometimes call them, reference customers, or the internal deal champions. But just in case, I hope I provide an answer to both.
Awesome. Well, it seems we have covered everything, and thank you so much, guys, for the fantastic questions, and happy to hear also that it was helpful. Again, what Vlad have said about the customers on our podcast, these are the most popular episodes. So we'll make a quick Easter/May holidays pause. Next week, we'll have one more episode before that pause, so stay tuned. We'll announce it on Monday. But then we'll make 2 weeks pause, and then again come back with the last pre-summer season, inviting our customers with whom we were doing ABM programs in Q4 and in Q1. So stay tuned. There would be lots of interesting use cases where you can, again, join and ask your peers live. Wishing you all the best, and see you in 1 week. Cheers. Take care, everybody.
Take care.